I think the most important attribute of a leader is responsibility. It's not simply the exercise of power, it is the acceptance of responsibility to work for the interest of others, to rise above your ego. When I grew up, it was in a very large family. I had 5 brothers and 5 sisters, and I was the second eldest. My childhood days was in a fishing village. Home was an attic house. No modern sanitation, no water supply. So I and my older brother go to the public tap to carry home pails of buckets of water. So very simple, but happy. It was joyful despite the fact that we were quite often hard up for money. I was maybe about 5 years old. My brother is 3 years older than me. I think there was a very significant moment. I was 12 years old. My mother had gone to the neighbors to borrow some money for me to buy my school books. She came home that day very dejected, with tears in her eyes. And she said, "Kok Song, our neighbors have no more money to lend us." It galvanized me because I said I would not want to see my mother cry again. So from that moment on, I resolved that I would study hard, I would work hard, so that I can lift my family out of poverty. And this photo was my last year in school. And this picture was taken for the prefectorial board because I was the head prefect. The prefectorial board in 1966 at Montfort School. What are the lessons that the present generation of Singaporeans can learn from my generation or the generation of leaders before? It's self-reliance. Singapore, after we separated from Malaysia, we had to make a living in the world. And what motivated the first generation of leaders in Singapore was that nobody in the world owes us a living. We have to make it with our own sweat and tears and our own effort. Self-reliance. Some photos are in hindsight, they become very significant because at that stage of your life, you didn't know the mystery of life. When I had just finished my pre-university, I was going to get a scholarship to go and study overseas, but my father lost his job. He asked my friend to speak to me and say that I would not be able to go overseas to study because I have to support my family. How am I going to lift our family out of poverty if I do not go to university? So I said, I will apply for a government bursary to study in our Singapore university, but I will also earn some money to support the family by giving private tuition. Every month when I was able to bring home some money to give to my mother, she would smile and she would say thank you. She would say thank you to me. That was perhaps the most stressful time of my life, but I never regretted that. I never regretted that because it showed me that when you're doing something meaningful, then you are able to find the energy, to do it. The family is the cradle of society. The family is where values are developed. Thrift and frugality, self-reliance, sacrifice. They start at home. They start at home. If Singapore is going to be a cohesive society, caring for one another, it starts at home. This was in 1966, the year where I was finishing high school. Kok Song is a brilliant young man of sound character who has made a substantial and valuable contribution to the life of the school. See, sometimes we ourselves do not know our potential. Brother Philibert, he had this foresight of my potentiality, which even myself, wasn't aware of. I had gone to university to study physics and mathematics. And because I had gone to university on a government bursary, I was obliged to work for the government to serve a bond. So I went for a placement interview with the Public Services Commission. So I said, there is a request from the Minister for Finance, Dr. Goh Keng Swee. He wants a fresh graduate with a background in mathematics. He says it's a job in a small department called the Department of Overseas Investments, investing our government's savings, our reserves in financial markets overseas, in stocks, in bonds, in foreign currencies. So I said, "Excuse me, sir, can you tell me what is the stock? What is the bond?" He says, "You mean you do not know? Don't you read the newspapers? Don't you listen to the radio or watch television?" I said, "Sir, I don't have a radio, let alone a television." He said, "But you studied mathematics?" I said, "Yes, sir. That's what the minister wants." And so that was how this poor village boy, with zero knowledge of what is the stock and what is the bond, became the Group Chief Investment Officer of GIC. What really helped me to remain cheerful and happy, during those very challenging years, was that I had met my wife in school. This is a photograph of me in school with my school sweetheart, Patricia. Without Patricia, I don't think I could have gone through those difficult years of my life. When I first met Patricia and had fallen in love with her at 18 years old, very frankly, I was a bit hesitant because she had come from town, so she lived in a government quarters with modern sanitation. So I was a bit afraid of inviting her to my home because it was a hut. One day, to my shock, she came with her friends, and I was a bit embarrassed. I remember she said to me, "Kok Song, what is there to be embarrassed? Your family is poor, But your father made an honest living. There's nothing to be ashamed of. You can be poor, but nothing to be ashamed of. Patricia accepted me as I was. That gave me a lot of confidence. Patricia and I found out, to our shock, that she had cancer in 2003. She was given about 3 months to live, but she went on to live for 19 months. At Christmas 2003, Deborah went up to her mom and said, "Mom, we bought you a little present, but there's a bigger present coming in 9 months' time." I said, "You mean you're going to have a baby?" Patricia was so delighted. And she says, "Kok Song, I'm going to press on. I'm going to go whatever treatment because I want to cradle the baby." A few months later, my son told me and Patricia that Ling Fong was pregnant too. So Patricia said, "Wow, another baby." The expectation of the two babies lifted Patricia up. I decided to focus on her. So I took time off from work so that I could go with her on every visit to the doctor. For every treatment, she had chemotherapy, radiation, surgery. I cannot suffer physically the way she was suffering, but I can accompany her in her passion by being with her. That is the meaning of compassion. To share somebody's passion, to share their suffering by being with them. And this is the woman who has loved me. So love requires me to do the same. Patricia was able to cradle the two babies before she passed away. My feelings at that time were that I had received so much love from Patricia. It was enough to last me a lifetime. My beloved darling Kik, K-I-K, her nickname for me. You have really lifted me up to where I truly am today. I would have been much less without you. I love you deeply and will always love you. Swat, your eternal sweetheart. We spend a lot of time developing the mind, by study, by thinking, by discussion, but we neglect the spirit. But in order for us to come to the wholeness of life, of a human being, we must also cultivate and nourish the spirit. And that is why I found over the last 35 years how meditation has helped me to become a better leader. Your followers want you to lead them to a place that they have not been. You have to show the way. And that calls for clarity of mind, to know what is really important. Meditation is a life skill. It helps us to deal with the inevitable stresses of life. Because when we sit down to meditate, we go to a place of peace and harmony and clarity within ourselves. It's as though there is a power source deep within us that we can tap if we're able to practice the spirit of silence and stillness. Of all the people that I have shared meditation with, Mr. Lee was my best student. At work, he was the teacher and I was the student. But when it came to meditation, I was the teacher and he was the student. Whenever I go to share meditation with him, to talk about meditation, he would ask for my teaching to be recorded, and then he would come back with questions. I say, Mr. Lee, when I'm not here with you, do you practice on your own? And his response was, of course. What's the point of learning if you don't practice? I said, you are extraordinary. I'm very impressed by your discipline. And he said to me, he said, Kok Song, if I am not a disciplined man, our country wouldn't be where it is today. So you see, seriousness and discipline. Those were the two lessons that I took from Mr. Lee when I shared with him about meditation. On the last occasion when I saw Mr. Lee, shortly before he died, he held my hand and he says, Kok Song, thank you so much for spending so much time teaching me to meditate. I said, Mr. Lee, you do not know what a great honor it has been for me to spend this time with you, sitting in silence with you, meditating. And that smile on Mr. Lee's face, I will never forget. What I have learned is that life is a mystery. It's a mystery. We do not know what sort of plans God has in mind for us. So there's a saying that if you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans.